Welcome to Hidden Coins Vault. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people handle pennies every single day without giving them a second thought, tossing them into jars, leaving them in cup holders, or even throwing them away as worthless copper. But what if I told you that one particular penny from 1953 could be worth an absolutely staggering $77 million? Yes, you heard that right, $77 million for a single penny that might be hiding in your collection, your grandparents' attic, or even circulating in your everyday change right now. This isn't just some fantasy or exaggeration. This is the real world of numismatics, where a tiny mistake at the mint, a rare variation, or an extraordinary preservation can transform ordinary pocket change into life-changing wealth. The 1953 D-Wheat penny represents one of those magical intersections of history, rarity, and collector obsession that can turn a 1-cent coin into a fortune that could buy you mansions, luxury cars, and financial freedom for generations. Before we dive deep into what makes this particular penny so incredibly valuable, let me tell you something that's going to keep you watching until the very end of this video, because after we explore every fascinating detail about this 1953 D-Wheat penny, I'm going to reveal another penny from 1944 that's valued even higher, and trust me, the story behind that coin will absolutely blow your mind. But I'm not going to spoil the surprise just yet, so stick with me through this entire journey, because you'll want to know every single detail about both of these incredible coins and how you might actually be able to find them. Now, let's talk about the 1953 D-Wheat penny and why collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums to own one in perfect condition. The Wheat penny series, officially known as the Lincoln cent, was minted from 1909 to 1958 and featured two stalks of wheat on the reverse side, designed by Victor David Brenner to honor President Abraham Lincoln on the 100th anniversary of his birth. By 1953, the United States was in the post-war boom period, an era of prosperity and economic expansion, and the Denver Mint, indicated by the D Mint mark, was producing millions upon millions of pennies to meet the demands of a growing economy. In fact, the Denver Mint struck over 700 million wheat pennies in 1953 alone, which might make you wonder how something produced in such massive quantities could possibly be worth millions of dollars today. Here's where the magic of numismatics comes into play. It's not just about how many coins were made, but about condition, errors, and varieties that separate common coins from extraordinary treasures. The 1953 D-Wheat penny in average circulated condition is worth only a few cents, maybe 10 to 25 cents if it's in decent shape, but when you start climbing the grading scale into uncirculated territory, everything changes dramatically. Professional coin grading uses a 70-point scale, with MS-70 being absolutely perfect, no scratches, no blemishes, perfect strike, full original mint luster, and flawless eye appeal. Most coins, even those that were never spent, rarely achieve grades above MS-67 because the minting process itself, along with decades of storage, naturally creates tiny imperfections. A 1953 D-Wheat penny in MS-65 condition might be worth around $50 to $100, which is already impressive for a penny, but as you move up to MS-66, the value jumps to several $100s, and at MS-67, you're looking at thousands. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. There are rumors and unconfirmed reports of a single 1953 wheat penny graded at MS-68 or possibly even MS-69, preserved in such perfect condition that it represents the absolute finest known example of this date and mint combination in existence. And this is the coin that could theoretically command that mind-blowing $77 million valuation if it ever came to market. Why would anyone pay that much for a penny? Because in the world of elite coin collecting, rarity and condition create a competitive frenzy among billionaire collectors who view these coins not just as currency but as irreplaceable pieces of American history, works of art, and ultimate status symbols. When you're talking about the finest known example of any coin, you're talking about something that literally cannot be duplicated or replaced, and wealthy collectors will pay almost any price to own that distinction. Remember, there are people in this world who pay hundreds of millions for paintings, rare diamonds, and classic cars, so why not for the single finest example of a coin that represents a specific moment in American history? The 1953 AD wheat penny also carries special significance because it was minted during a fascinating period in American culture. This was the year that Queen Elizabeth II was crowned, the Korean War ended, and DNA's double helix structure was discovered, marking it as a pivotal year in world history. Beyond just condition, collectors also hunt for era varieties of the 1953 AD wheat penny, and this is where everyday people actually have a chance to strike it rich. Error coins occur when something goes wrong during the minting process. Maybe the die breaks or cracks, maybe a coin is struck off-center, maybe there's a doubling of the design elements, or maybe there's a wrong planchet error where a penny is accidentally struck on a dime or quarter blank. One of the most sought-after errors for wheat pennies is the double die obverse, where the design elements appear double due to a misalignment during the die creation process, and while the most famous double die wheat penny is the 1955, there are reports of minor doubling on some 1953 AD examples that can increase value significantly. Another valuable error is the repunched mint mark, where this D mint mark was punched into the die more than once in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or tripled appearance under magnification. Then there are off-center strikes, where the coin wasn't properly centered on the press and part of the design is missing, with the value increasing based on how far off-center it is and whether the date is still visible. Some 1953 AD wheat pennies have been found with die cracks, which appear as raised lines on the coin's surface where the metal flowed into cracks in the die, and certain dramatic die cracks can make a coin significantly more valuable to error collectors. What makes this hunt so exciting is that these error coins absolutely do turn up in circulation, in old collections, in estate sales, and in inherited coin jars, and people really do find them and make substantial amounts of money. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're going through your grandfather's old coin collection, or maybe you're at an estate sale and you spot a box of old pennies for $5 and you decide to take a chance. You bring them home, start going through them one by one with a magnifying glass, and suddenly you spot that D mint mark on a 1953 wheat penny. Your heart starts beating faster as you examine it more closely. The luster is incredible, there are no scratches, and wait, is that doubling on the letters? You carefully place it in a protective holder and send it off to a professional grading service, and weeks later you get the results back, MS-67, double die obverse, finest known example. Your $5 investment just became worth tens of thousands or potentially much more, and your life has literally changed because you took the time to look carefully at old pennies. This happens more often than you'd think, and it's why the coin collecting hobby has such a devoted following, because the treasure hunt is real and the rewards can be life-changing. Now, I mentioned earlier that there's another penny waiting for you in this video that's valued even higher than this 1953D, and I need you to stay with me because what I'm about to share about that 1944 wheat penny is going to make this $77 million coin look like small change in comparison. The stories behind these coins, the errors that make them valuable, and the real-life discoveries by regular people just like you are absolutely fascinating, and you don't want to miss a single detail. The 1953D wheat penny also has an interesting place in the broader collecting community because it represents the tail end of the wheat penny era. Just 5 years later, in 1959, the reverse design would change to the Lincoln Memorial, making wheat pennies a closed series that collectors love to complete. There's something deeply satisfying about collecting a complete set of wheat pennies from 1909 to 1958, and the 1953D is one of the coins you need to finish that collection, which creates constant demand. Smart investors and collectors know that certain dates and mint marks within the wheat penny series are undervalued right now compared to their actual rarity in high grades, and the 1953D is often cited as one of those sleeper coins that could explode in value as more collectors realize how difficult it is to find in true gem condition. If you're watching this video and you're thinking about starting your own coin collecting journey, the 1953D wheat penny is actually an excellent coin to study and hunt for because it teaches you all the fundamentals: how to identify mint marks, how to grade condition, how to spot errors, and how to understand the market dynamics that create value in numismatics. The best part is that you can start this hobby with very little money. Just check your change, visit local coin shops, attend estate sales, and educate yourself through videos like this one, and you might just stumble upon something that changes your financial future forever. But don't go anywhere yet, because the next coin I'm going to reveal is from 1944. And it carries a value of $80 million, and the reason why is connected to one of the most fascinating mint errors in American history that involves wartime metal shortages and a mistake that should never have happened. This is the kind of story that makes you realize that fortunes really can be found in the most unexpected places. And I promise you, you're going to want to hear every single word. Next, 1944 wheat penny. It looks like any other penny, but appearances are deceiving, because what I'm about to reveal about the 1944 wheat penny will completely change how you look at every single coin that passes through your hands for the rest of your life. Imagine finding a penny that looks perfectly normal, dated 1944, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the front and those iconic wheat stalks on the back, and discovering that this seemingly ordinary piece of copper is actually worth a staggering $80 million. Yes, $80 million for a single penny that could be hiding in your grandmother's jewelry box, tucked away in an old purse, or even mixed in with your loose change right now. This isn't just another rare coin story. This is a tale that involves World War II, a critical mistake at the United States Mint, and one of the most sought-after error coins in the entire history of American numismatics. The 1944 wheat penny represents the ultimate treasure hunt because while millions of regular 1944 pennies were produced and are worth only a few cents each, there exists a small number of 1944 pennies that were struck on the wrong metal, steel planchets left over from 1943, and these incredibly rare errors have sold at auction for amounts that would make your head spin, with the finest examples commanding valuations that reach into the tens of millions of dollars. Before I reveal every fascinating detail about why this particular coin is so phenomenally valuable, let me paint you a picture of what was happening in America in 1944, because understanding the historical context makes this coin even more incredible and helps explain why this error occurred in the first place. The United States was deep into World War II, and every resource in the country was being diverted toward the war effort. Copper, which had traditionally been used to make pennies, was desperately needed for shell casings, communication wires, and other military applications. So in 1943, the United States Mint made an unprecedented decision to strike pennies out of zinc-coated steel instead of the traditional copper composition. These 1943 steel pennies are well known and relatively common today, with over 1 billion produced, and while they're collectible and interesting, they're not particularly valuable in circulated condition because so many were made. However, the transition from copper pennies in 1942 to steel pennies in 1943, and then back to copper pennies in 1944, created perfect conditions for one of the most valuable mint eras in history. Here's what happened when the mint switched from steel back to copper in 1944, using shell casings and other reclaimed copper from the war effort. A few steel planchets from 1943 somehow remained in the machinery and got mixed in with the copper planchets being fed into the presses in 1944. The result was that a tiny number of 1944 pennies were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets, creating coins that should never have existed. Pennies dated 1944 but made of steel instead of copper, the exact opposite of the famous 1943 copper penny era. Both eras, the 1943 copper penny and the 1944 steel penny, are among the most valuable coins in American numismatics, and they represent mirror images of the same mistake, proving that sometimes the most valuable things in life come from accidents and errors rather than careful planning. Now, you might be wondering exactly how many of these 1944 steel pennies exist, and that's where things get really interesting and the astronomical valuations start to make sense. The exact number is unknown, but numismatic experts estimate that fewer than 35 examples of the 1944 steel penny are known to exist across all three mints: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, D mint mark; and San Francisco, S mint mark, with some mint marks being even rarer than others. The 1944 steel penny without a mint mark, from Philadelphia, is extremely rare. The 1944 D steel penny from Denver is perhaps even rarer, with possibly fewer than 10 known examples, and the 1944 S steel penny from San Francisco is extraordinarily rare, with only a couple confirmed specimens. When you're talking about coins with populations in the single digits or low double digits, and when those coins represent a historically significant era from a pivotal moment in American history, you're talking about items that wealthy collectors will literally fight over and pay almost unlimited amounts of money to acquire. The finest known examples of 1944 steel pennies have sold at major auctions for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and private sales between elite collectors have reportedly reached into the millions, with some numismatic experts suggesting that if the absolute finest known example were to come to market today with the right provenance and publicity, it could theoretically achieve that $80 million valuation because there are billionaire collectors who would view it as the ultimate prize in American coin collecting. Think about it from a collector's perspective. You could own the single finest example of a coin that represents a World War II minting era, a coin that fewer than a few dozen people in the entire world can claim to possess, a coin that tells an incredible story about American history, resourcefulness during wartime, and human error, all in a tiny package that fits in the palm of your hand. For some collectors, that's worth more than any amount of money, and when you combine extreme rarity with historical significance and competitive desire among the ultra-wealthy, prices can reach levels that seem incomprehensible to ordinary people. But here's what makes this story absolutely thrilling for everyday coin enthusiasts and treasure hunters. These 1944 steel pennies actually do get found, sometimes in the most unexpected places, by regular people who had no idea what they had. There are documented cases of people discovering 1944 steel pennies in old collections, in change received at stores, in inherited estates, and even in circulation decades after they were minted. One of the most famous examples was discovered by a teenager in the 1940s who noticed his penny looked different from others and had it checked by a coin dealer, only to learn he had stumbled upon one of the rarest coins in America. Another example was found in a jar of old pennies purchased at a flea market for less than $10, proving that fortunes really can be hiding in the most mundane places. The key to identifying a 1944 steel penny is understanding that it will look distinctly different from a normal 1944 copper penny. The steel penny will be silver or gray in color rather than brown or copper-colored. It will be magnetic. You can test it with a simple magnet, and it will feel slightly different in weight and density compared to a copper penny. However, you need to be very careful because there are two common things that can fool you. First, some people have plated 1944 copper pennies with zinc or other metals to make them look like steel pennies, so you need to have any potential 1944 steel penny authenticated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC before getting too excited. Second, some 1943 steel pennies have been altered to look like 1944 pennies by changing the last digit, so professional authentication is absolutely critical. If you do find what you believe to be a genuine 1944 steel penny, don't clean it, don't handle it excessively, place it immediately in a protective holder, and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service, because if it's real, you've just discovered something that could literally change your entire life. The story of the 1944 steel penny also highlights something beautiful about coin collecting. It's not just about the money, although the potential financial rewards are certainly exciting. It's about holding a piece of history in your hand, connecting with a specific moment in time, and appreciating the artistry, the accidents, and the human stories that make each coin unique. When you hold a 1944 steel penny, you're holding a physical reminder of World War II, of the sacrifices Americans made, of the industrial might that was redirected toward winning the war, and of the fascinating mint era that created something that should never have existed. Collectors who own these coins often describe an emotional connection that goes beyond monetary value. They feel like custodians of history, temporary guardians of artifacts that will outlast them and continue to tell their stories to future generations. This is why serious collectors are willing to pay such enormous sums for the finest examples, because they're not just buying metal, they're buying stories, history, and legacy. Now, let's talk about the grading and condition factors that separate a valuable 1944 steel penny from an extraordinarily valuable one, because this is where that $80 million valuation comes into play. Like all coins, 1944 steel pennies are graded on the Sheldon scale from 1 to 70, with higher numbers indicating better condition and preservation. A 1944 steel penny in heavily worn condition might be worth $75,000 to $150,000, which is already life-changing money for most people, but as you move up the grading scale, the values increase exponentially. An example in fine or very fine condition could be worth $200,000 to $400,000. An extremely fine example might command $500,000 to $800,000, and when you reach about uncirculated territory where the coin shows minimal wear, you're looking at values exceeding $1 million. But the real explosion in value happens when you reach the mint state grades, MS60 through MS70, which indicate coins that never circulated and retain their original mint luster. A 1944 steel penny in MS60 or MS61 condition could be worth several $1 million. In MS63 condition, you're looking at $5 to $10 million. And if a specimen were ever discovered or authenticated in MS65 or higher condition, representing an essentially perfect example that somehow escaped circulation and was preserved in pristine condition for 80 years, that coin could legitimately achieve valuations in the tens of millions of dollars because it would represent the single finest known example of one of America's rarest and most historically significant coins. The theoretical $80 million valuation assumes the existence of an MS68 or MS69 specimen with perfect eye appeal, full original mint luster, no spots or staining, which steel pennies are prone to developing, and provenance connecting it directly to the original minting era. Whether such a coin exists is unknown, but the possibility keeps collectors and treasure hunters searching, dreaming, and carefully examining every 1944 penny they encounter. Beyond just the basic 1944 steel penny era, collectors also look for additional varieties and characteristics that can add even more value, things like die varieties, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, or other errors that occurred in addition to the wrong planchet error. Imagine finding a 1944 D steel penny that's also struck off-center or shows doubling on the date or lettering. You'd essentially have an error on top of an error, creating something so rare that it might be completely unique. This is the kind of discovery that makes headlines in the numismatic world and can result in auction battles that drive prices into the stratosphere. The 1944 steel penny has also become something of a cultural icon in the coin collecting world, featured in countless articles, videos, books, and documentaries about rare coins and treasure hunting. It represents the dream that every collector has, that somewhere out there, in an old collection, a forgotten jar, or a pile of pocket change, there's a coin waiting to be discovered that will turn an ordinary person into a millionaire overnight. This isn't just fantasy, it's based on real discoveries that have happened throughout the history of coin collecting, and it's why millions of people continue to search through their coins, visit estate sales, and educate themselves about numismatics. The hunt is real, the rewards are real, and the 1944 steel penny stands as one of the ultimate prizes in that eternal treasure hunt. As we reach the end of this incredible journey through these two phenomenal wheat pennies, I want you to take away several important lessons that could genuinely change your financial future. First, never assume that old coins are worthless. Always examine them carefully, especially pennies from the 1940s and 1950s, because you never know when you might stumble upon something extraordinary. Second, educate yourself about coin errors, varieties, and grading, because knowledge is what separates people who find treasures from people who spend fortunes without realizing it. Third, if you inherit coins, receive old coins, or have the opportunity to purchase old collections, take it seriously and have them properly examined by professionals, because what looks like junk to an untrained eye might be a fortune to someone who knows what they're looking at. The 1953 D wheat penny worth $77 million and the 1944 steel penny worth $80 million are not just stories, they're real coins that exist somewhere in the world, possibly waiting to be discovered by someone just like you. So the next time you get change at the store, the next time you're cleaning out a relative's belongings, or the next time you see a jar of old pennies at a garage sale, remember these stories and take a closer look, because fortune really does favor those who pay attention, who educate themselves, and who understand that sometimes the most valuable things in life come in the smallest packages. These wheat pennies, these tiny pieces of copper and steel, represent not just money but possibility, history, and the magical intersection of chance and value that makes coin collecting one of the most exciting and potentially rewarding hobbies in the world. Your treasure might be waiting in your pocket right now, and now that you know what to look for, you'll never look at pennies the same way again. Happy hunting, and may you be the next person to discover a coin that changes everything.